Okay, folks, welcome again to our second episode of Pirkei Avos with Rabbi Chaim Coffman, all the way from Israel. I'm so excited about this class. It really means a lot to me, and I really love the way last week he touched on the way the Torah was received by Moshe on Mount Sinai and how it was transmitted to Joshua and Joshua to the elders and so on and so forth. But today, hopefully, we're going to get more into the ethics of the fathers and where they come from. And I just personally love the energy that Rabbi Chaim Coffman shares with. He's just so vigorous. And to me, it punches the message home. And I can tell that he's been studying this stuff all his life. And he's just a joy to spend some time with. So without any further ado, Rabbi Coffman, happy Hanukkah. How is everything in Israel? And so glad to have you back.
It's great to be back. Everything's great. Getting some much needed rain. I don't think it started yet, but definitely a big windstorm out there. So, it's always fun trying to let outside in a windstorm, and even more difficult than rain. So, which we're going to get the next few days, which is good because we definitely need the rain. So that is definitely very exciting. So as always, pleasure to be here. So we're going to go through the first Mishnah. Actually,
Right.
might actually finish it. So you gave a very good introduction. But the last part of the Mishnah we spoke last week about transmission. Right, how Moshe received it, transmitted to Joshua the elders the prophets that met a great assembly. We spoke all about that, became a telephone, right? So we got all into that. So now what did they say? It's very good, it got transmitted, but now we have to see what they say. Right? So the men of the great assembly, this is the last part of the Mishnah here. They said three things. First thing is be deliberate in judgment. Develop many disciples, have a lot of students. We'll see exactly what that means. And make a fence around the Torah. And I'm not sure we're going to get past that. We'll see. We'll see how far we get. Now, so the question obviously is going to be, what does it mean to be deliberate in judgment? Who's it speaking about? Well, it should be obvious. It's speaking about rabbinic court judges. Right? It could be speaking to everybody. Right? In theory, in other words, something comes up. And, someone says something or whatever, you want to judge it. Where is it coming from? Did I judge it good? Did I judge it bad? But it's not talking about the normal, everyday Joe. All right? It's talking about rabbinic court judges. That you shouldn't be quick to answer and give a clear-cut answer based on the first thoughts. Right? Normally, let's say if you're taking a test, people will say, whatever you write down first, that's probably the right answer. Because if you sit there and you think about it and you dwell on it, then it just confuses the person, right? And if it's multiple choice, if you don't know the answer, right, you normally choose B, right? That's the, maybe 65%,
guess, yeah.
75% of the time, you might actually be right. But if you have to, you have to fill in the blank or you have to write an answer, usually the first thing comes to your mind, is probably the closest thing to the truth, or, maybe you're just way off. But you don't give an answer based on your first thoughts. Now, we'll give a little bit of background, how a Beis Din works, how a rabbinical court works, right? Let's say there are two litigants. I mean, there should be two litigants. Let's say you have Reuven and Shimon. We'll make it easy. Or, we'll say, Joe and Seth come to rabbinical court here, right? Or Reuven and Shimon. And they have a claim. One has a claim against the other. So they have to abide by what the rabbinical court says. And the first person who's got the claim against the other person, right? Let's say Reuven has a claim against Shimon, he's able to speak first. And Shimon can't interrupt, right? He's not allowed to interrupt. He has to give his testimony. And then they allow Shimon to answer. And so they'll go back and forth, right? Reuven will interject. And in between, the rabbis will ask, okay, do we have witnesses? Is there a document? Did they sign anything? You need clarification. There are different ways to get clarification, right? They're going to give their testimony. They need clarification so they can understand the case at hand. Now, it's also brought down, someone who's quick to answer is called a rasha. It's called a choite, a sinner. What if he knows the answer straight away? I heard my Rebbe say many times, sat with him in the rabbinical court, and he said, I could have told you after the first 5 minutes where this is going to go. He said, but this judge wanted to do this, and he wanted to ask that, and he wanted to ask the other thing. He said, I could have told you the first 5 minutes, where it's going to go, what's going to happen, right? But okay, they wanted to ask other questions, this, that, and it just schleps. It just, keeps going. But you can't give an answer straight away, right? You have to hear the testimony, if there is testimony, right? You have to see, if there are documents, other things. You have to get to the heart of the case. Sometimes it's an open and shut case, right? Sometimes you don't need that much information. Other times you might need more information. I might have to bring in witnesses, right? So someone who's deciding Jewish law or has a case in front of them with two litigants, they have to scrutinize them until they have absolute clarity, right? So in this case, it's talking about a rabbinic court judge. Now, what happens if a case comes in and it came before them before? Exact same case.
Exact same
comes
case.
Before, yeah. Let's say it's a very similar case, right? Similar case comes before them once, twice. Like for instance, if there's an open and shut case, right? 10 times out of 10, this is going to be the answer, right? So they come in, you say, okay, I already heard this case. I already know what the answer is, right? They shouldn't say, I already know this. We already had this case before. Had it last week, had it a month ago, right? The same answer, right? Whatever it is, 42, right? That's the answer. That's it. What, I have to look into this, look into that, the same case, right? Same exact case. So a person is not allowed to do that. You still have to hear the case. Maybe there's a nuance. Maybe there's a difference. And a person also has to realize the importance of someone who decides Jewish law. Now, when I sat in the rabbinical court once a week for 5 years, one time I ever heard any litigant say, thank you very much. Thank you for judging this case. Okay, he was Sephardic, so he's more close to the tradition. But but people think you walk into a rabbinical court and they think, oh, what do these people know? They just know the books. They know what the Talmud says. They know what some of the commentators say. Oh, what do they know about life? What do they know about life? So they, you have these like what they call a Tohen Rabbani. You have like a high-priced lawyer, right, who gives over the case, who represents, right? He's someone who represents, one of the litigants. So what are they paid to do? They're paid to win the case. Now, could it be that they're going to lie or say other things or whatever to get their client to win? Could be. It's not a very, let's just say it's not such a very clean job, right? Nonetheless, rabbinic court judges, you have to have respect for what they know, right? I remember there was one of these lawyer types, comes in and starts yelling and screaming, jumping up and down, and he quoted a certain response, and he said, and it's like this, and we learn it like this, and we learn it like that, and that's why we're right over here. So my Rebbe got up and he said, first of all, we also know that response. He said, second of all, that's not what it means. And third of all, there's a reason you're sitting over there and we're sitting over here. Right? Just like slapped him. Like put him in his place. I'm like, yeah. I was like, I was just sitting there. Watch just like slam them. So they look at these rabbinic court judges like they're fools. Like they don't know anything, whatever. It's like a disgrace. It's like it's an absolute disgrace. If you walk into, you walk in the Supreme Court, in Israel, fancy building, fancy seats, that's where quote unquote the real respect is. But that's like a perversion of justice, right? It's a perversion of law because it doesn't go according to Jewish law. In any case, someone who interprets Jewish law, who's a rabbi, that can give answers, the rabbinic court judge, right? They're held to a higher standard.
Right.
Because of what they know. Because of their stature. So they have to be careful. They absolutely have to be careful.
Yeah, be deliberate in judgment, patient and restrained.
Right, but, I could understand where people are trying to lie to you, and people don't show respect. You can understand that, like, the rabbis could fly off the handle a little bit, that people show disrespect and whatever, but they're held to a higher standard, right? You can speak for the next, 3 hours about, anyone who represents Torah, right? An Orthodox Jew, even a rabbi. We'll speak about rabbis. We'll get there, right? They're held to a higher standard. I'll tell you the following story, scary story. There was somebody that, had a store, and they sold fabric that wasn't, let's say, it wasn't the best fabric, but they were selling it, let's say it's grade A, but it was really like grade C minus. In the end, what happened? So the person wears this thing, whatever it is, and then like this nice embroidery, on this, and it comes off in the wash first time. It was fraud. You're selling it for
Right.
$150. It's really worth 25, if that, on a good day, right? So, who owned the store was an Orthodox Jew. Now, I can tell you, for public relations, never give this answer. And this woman comes, starts yelling and screaming at this guy. How can you sell me this? You rip me off and all this and all that. And you represent Torah. Now, I wasn't a rabbi, thank God. But if he was, it would have been even worse. Bigger desecration of God's name. Now, never answer this to anybody. If they ask you if you represent Torah, if you're an Orthodox Jew or an Orthodox Jew wannabe. What did this guy said, how can you do it? This woman said, how can you do this? You're ripping me off. So what did he answer? He said, who told you to put Orthodox Jews on such a high pedestal? That is not good for business. That is a desecration of God's name. Now imagine if he himself was a rabbi. And he said, you're right. I ripped you off, so don't you represent Torah? Aren't you the highest level representing Torah? You're an Orthodox Jew? You're a quote-unquote rabbi? We'll speak about rabbis, but I want to tell you the following story. That Mori Rebbe, Arav Agon, or Moshe Stormach Shlita should be well, the head of the most powerful rabbinical court here in Jerusalem, been close to more than 20 years. I'll quote him a lot. Hopefully for the good, not for the bad. And he once told me the following story. I was on the way taking the rabbinical court, and he told me about a particular question that he was dealing with. And I said, so what's the answer? He goes, I'm not really sure. I thought like this, and I thought like that, and so I'm stringent like this. So I said, good. 5 minutes later, being a little bit obnoxious, I asked him again. I said, so what's the answer? So he said, well, some hold like this, some hold like that. He started like bringing me all these different sources. And he said, I'm still not sure. And, I'm stringent like this and like this. 3 minutes later, I asked him again. I don't recommend this, but I asked him again. And he looked at me and he said, I'm going to tell you something. He said, the Brisker Rav Yisrael Zev Soloveitchik Zecher Tzadik Levrocha, may his name be blessed, famous son of Rabbi Chaim Soloveitchik, Torah giant, no question about it. And the Brisker Rav said, it's better to say I don't know than to give a klutz answer. Right? To give an answer that's not true. Forget about looking into it and this and that. He said, it's better to say I don't know and I'm not sure. So my Rebbe looked at me and he said, I want you to say in my name. He said, you say in my name, Moshe Stormach says I don't know. Now you're talking about someone who knows everything about everything. There's all the commentaries, all the midrashim, everything in the palm of his hand. Probably the Torah giant of this generation. Nothing to talk about. So he said, you say in my name I don't know. So a minute and a half later, I looked at him. He said, I don't know. He said, don't ask me. Right? So a rabbinic court judge has to be extremely careful. Right? We're not going to take it and say, we will get to a point where we'll say, that there's a mitzvah to judge everyone favorably. Now, it depends what the person did, depends where they're holding, depends on a lot of different factors, but Being deliberate in judgment is speaking about a rabbinic court judge and about the obligation of a rabbinic court judge. The Talmud says that they have to look at their judgment and what they're doing. It's the most important thing they've ever done.
Yes.
That it's it's so crucial. It is so important.
Is that to prevent miscarriages of justice?
Yeah, but it's interesting that when the Torah says don't take a bribe, you're not allowed to take a bribe. Who does it refer to? You might say it refers to anybody, right? Taking a bribe, right? Whatever job you have or whatever. What does it do? It changes the way you look at things because someone's giving you a bribe. It's not talking about the everyday person. It's talking about a judge. It's talking about a rabbinic court judge. Now, if you tell me a rabbinic court judge who knows a tremendous amount of Torah and is supposed to be on the up and up, why are we worried he's going to take a bribe? Why in the world should you ever be worried? Because they're corrupt judges. There are rabbinical courts, unfortunately, that are corrupt. So you say, how can a rabbi be in a rabbinical court and be corrupt? And they can be corrupt judgments. This is the way of the world. We're not perfect. Right? But when it says don't take a bribe, the greater a person, right? The greater a person spiritually is, the greater their evil inclination is.
Yes, I've heard that.
So what that means is, what do you think? The evil inclination just lets go? We see that by Yaakov, last week's parsha. Yaakov, it says, Vayeshev Yaakov. Yaakov wants to dwell in quiet. He's had all kinds of problems. Had problems with his brother. He had problems with Lavan, right? Getting Rachel, he got swindled. Right? A problem with Dinah, a problem with Yosef. So what do you think? He wants to go sipping pina coladas? No. He wants, and maybe he does, but I don't think so. He wants just to be able to sit and learn. He doesn't want to have all these trials and tribulations. Comes along the Torah and says, okay, he wanted to be judged according to strict judgment. When God created the world, he created with strict judgment and with mercy. But he saw the world couldn't be established with strict judgment. Right. We die, and there wouldn't be anybody around. But there were certain individuals who wanted to live their life according to strict justice. But you see, even at an old age, he's still growing. He's still having trials and tribulations. Right? So the greater the person, you think, Yosef grew up in his father's house. Right? Should have been the fourth Avos, should have been just as great as Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Right? But, in the end, he almost sinned with the wife of Potiphar. And if it wasn't for the image of his father, he probably would have sinned. But as great as he was, he still needed that protection. Right? So what that means is the greater the person spiritually, and as much as they've learned, the question is, did they internalize the message? Right? Did they get the message where they're working on themselves? They're learning Musar, they're learning ethics. And it's going to change them, but what do you think? The evil inclination is going to, it's just going to rest? It's not going to do anything? It's going to say, okay, we'll leave him alone. We've tested him enough. We're going to let him sit and learn. Forget it. He's still got other potential. So that's what it means. That's what it means to be deliberate in judgment. Right? So what's the next part? What's the next part of the Mishnah? Next part of the Mishnah says, have many students.
Yes. Establish a large cadre of disciples. Yeah.
Yeah. So what does that mean? So it must mean I should have as many students as possible. And that's what simple explanation would be. But a person has to be careful. You have to be careful because you could have what they call a Talmud She'eino Hagun. What's a Talmud She'eino Hagun? A student that's not fitting to be a student. Right? He goes sour. Doesn't have proper character traits. Right? So a person has to be careful who they teach.
Can you elaborate
and they have
on that?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm going to go through it in a second. A person has to be careful who they teach, because who knows what a person's going to do with information, with this information. Right? And a student could go sour. A person could have a student teach them a lot of Torah, but the student's not worthy of accepting what is being taught. So the tremendous responsibility for someone who teaches, no question about it. He has to make sure the students, who their students are, what their capabilities are. Can't just teach anyone. Because someone could, use that information or do other things. It could be a total embarrassment. What are you doing teaching such a person? Because you teach such a person, the person doesn't work on themselves. The person's my language. They're a schlep. They don't do what they're supposed to do. And they give you a bad name. Like my Rebbe once told me, he said, listen, when you go against me, only throw small pebbles. So God forbid you change my life, this, that. He goes, I know what I'm talking about. I've had a lot of people come out against me, only throw small pebbles. So you got to be careful who you teach. On the flip side, now this is a much bigger topic, which we'll get into a little bit, and that is, how does the person know who to learn from? Wow. So you and I both know there's a lot of fraud. Capital F. A lot of fraud out there. Right? When it comes to Noahites, teaching Noahites, teaching converts, doing mass conversions. You know who you are. Right? Mr. Fraud himself. So you got to be careful who you learn from. So the Talmud says, how do I know who to learn from? If they see their teacher as an angel, then they can learn from them. Doesn't mean they're perfect, right? Everyone has flaws, right? No one's perfect, right? What does the verse say? No one's been in this world hasn't sinned, right? Everybody sins at their level, but you have to be able to learn someone who's got integrity, right? Stands up for what needs to be what needs to be stood up for. One of my rabbis once told me, learned under someone brilliant in Torah, knew the Talmud backwards and forwards, unbelievable rabbinic scholar. But he said his character traits were so bad. He said it didn't last very long by him. Brilliant mind. But if you don't have cheretz, if you don't have, how to deal with people in a proper way, what does it matter what the Torah you learn?
Right. So key, so critical.
So one second, there are two aspects here. The first aspect is you got to be careful who you teach. And the second aspect is you have to know who to learn from. Yeah, you have to know who to glean from. Because again, people may look the part, walk the walk, talk the talk, but guess what? They're messianic. Or guess what? They do other things they shouldn't do. It's a problem. Because what that does is that there's a lot of lack of trust. When I deal with people that are interested in conversion, one of the first questions I'll get is, are you Orthodox? Well, I hope so. But they've been duped. They've been lied in the church. There are people that, call themselves rabbis and this and that, but they're a joke. They rip people off. And they give people that do good things a bad name. Right? So it's not just like, okay, I have these classes, I think you should join. This is something you'll be interested in and all that. But it's a whole thing of trust. How do I know you're the real deal? Right? That's why I called my page, Orthodox Conversion Judaism, the real deal. Because I'm the real deal. I have real credentials. There are other people that have no credentials, and they're calling me a fraud. You don't have any credentials, you bonehead. You're calling me a fraud. You're not gonna. So I made a video on YouTube. You can find it on my YouTube channel, Rabbi Chaim Coffman, and it said, "Who's the real fraud?" That was only like a short video. Most of my videos are like 40 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever. This is like a 15-minute video. Now this person's a real fraud, and someone said, like, "Why are you gonna waste your time? Everyone knows who this person is, and he's a fraud." I said, "You're right," but I said he took a screenshot, of my webpage, and he blasted out of proportion, like totally out of proportion. Right. So how can you learn from him? He does it. First of all, he didn't get what I do right and how much I charge. He didn't get that right either. Right? So I said, at least if you're gonna call me out on the right thing. Right? But so why did I answer it? Because I shouldn't even give this guy a soapbox. But why did I even spend 15 minutes on it? Because I wanted people to understand there's a difference. Someone has credentials, someone has real Das Torah, someone has real rabbinical authorities they go to, and that are responsible to answer for them. I mean, I'm definitely responsible answering for my Rebbe. I was out up north last Shabbos, and the third meal. So the rabbi's son there, asked me to speak. So I brought out my Rebbe's parsha sheet and whatever. So, he mentioned, to people there, my connection to him, whatever. So I spoke for 15 minutes, which is almost impossible for me. Spoke for like 10 minutes, whatever. That was like a little bit difficult.
That deserves a bunny.
So I ended up saying, a bunch of things that he brought in, he brought on the parsha. But I told a lot of stories also. And I was like, no, wait a minute, I got one more story. And they started to laugh because that was like 3 stories before. I got one more story. Come on, let me tell the story. So I have a responsibility. I told the son, this whole thing, the next day. And I have a responsibility as a student of his to give over his Torah the best way I can. Best way for people to understand. Right? So I have to make sure it's what he said. It's how he said it. It's a huge responsibility. Tremendous responsibility. Now, I owe him everything because he taught me, a tremendous amount. Right? Why he took me in, where I came from, is a whole big question. How I got there. That's for a different show. We can do that late at night, scare people. Right? That's for a different show. Right? But in the end, he saw something in me, whatever it was, and I grabbed on for dear life.
Yes.
And I took everything he had to offer plus. Right? So it's a responsibility of who to let in.
Right.
It's also a responsibility you have to be, you have to uphold your end of the bargain. Now let's give a real classic example. It is December 25th. So let's pick on JC a little bit. There's a story the Talmud brings down by the famous Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia. Yeshua ben Prachia was known to teach people 400 times. A tremendous amount of patience. You don't get it by me the first time or second time, you're out. I don't have patience. Come on, it's black and white. Get it. Come on. So easy. Right? So Yeshua ben Prachia was with, his disciple JC. Right? They were at an inn. They stopped over at an inn. Now, the way the Talmud relates the story. Mr. JC, call him Jay for short. Right? Jay made a lewd comment. He made a lewd comment well below the belt, about his Rebbe, the way he looked at the innkeeper's wife. A very lewd comment. Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia threw him out. You make such an obnoxious comment, you deserve to be thrown out. So he was ticked off, my language. So what happened? He came back to beg for forgiveness. Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia threw him out. He came back a second time. Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia threw him out. He came back a third time. Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia was in the middle of saying the Shema. When you're in the middle of saying the Shema, you cannot interrupt. In his mind, he said, I forgive you. But he couldn't interrupt. He couldn't answer. So what happened? Jay said, oh, you don't think I'm worthwhile? You don't think I'm any good? And he went off and became who he became. Now, in the end, he wanted to accept him. But he didn't. He wasn't able to say the words. And as we're going to say, the rest is history. So, after he made that comment, he understood he made a mistake in teaching him. And really, he didn't want to accept him back. But he had mercy. And he would have accepted him, and it didn't happen. Right? Circumstances it didn't happen, and that's why it says you should push away with one hand and draw close with the other. And he's punished for that. I mean, look at what all the people have been killed in his name. Thousands of years. It's uncanny. I mean, that's the punishment. Okay, a lot of things we don't properly understand. So having many students also means that the teachers have to give over to their students a way that's absolute clarity.
So,
in other words, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, just for that reason, to have many students, wasn't there a cap on that? And this is where the idea that a good rabbi should only have 12 key students.
I don't know if there will be an inner circle. I don't think there's any question. The ones who are so close to, let's say to the Rebbe, but he can have thousands of students. Rabbi Kiva had thousands of students, right?
Right,
But
I see.
there's the whole question why they died, right? They didn't show respect one for the other, right? The whole question what that means or what happened, right? But in order to be, to have proper students, you have to give them clarity. You have to be able to teach. Not every rabbinic scholar has the ability to give over. Some people are just not gifted in doing that. They can say it in a certain way, but it's not clear, right? It's not understandable. Now, there are rabbis out there that they'll speak at a very high level, and they'll say whoever gets it, gets it. Now, I don't know if there's any mitzvah in that. Where is the mitzvah of giving over in such a way no one understands them?
Rabbi, wasn't that the case as the transmission progressed? It does talk about in the early times that there was Moshe and Joshua transmitted it, and then I think as it progresses, it says they received from, and the term received from different than transmitted, and it really had to do with that connection you're just pointing out. If the teacher can't teach fully, or if the student can't grasp fully.
The main difference is that by Moshe and Yeshua, by Joshua, they had it all in their hand. In other words, they received it, everything. But the prophets and the men of the Great Assembly, they couldn't receive everything. They had to be given over in parts or whatever, and then they give it over, and they give it over, et cetera. It had to be understood. It certainly had to be understood. So, there are people out there that will want to give over information, and nobody gets it, right? It could be. Let's say, the difference between the Jerusalem Talmud and the Babylonian Talmud. Jerusalem Talmud is very hard to understand. It's very cryptic. It's much more cryptic than the Babylonian Talmud. That's why the Babylonian Talmud, one of the reasons why it was much more accepted. Right? It's more clarity. Right? It's definitely easier in a lot of ways to understand. Now, it also means over here, what does it mean to have a lot of students? That the understanding of what they give over lasts forever. In other words, it's given over, and it passes the test of time. If it's something that can't be understood, and it's very cryptic, finished. Who's going to learn it? It's not going to be preserved. Right? There are statements that are made that are cryptic, that you want everyone to figure out, to understand. Only the ones who had, real proper understanding. But that's not the majority of what they learned. It's not what them, if they made everything cryptic, no one's going to remember anything. No one's going to learn it. So it also means over here that you have to have proper students that are going to go in the ways of a rabbi. They're going to go the ways, and they're learning. And they're teaching. In other words, it's going to be pure. They're not going to bring in extraneous things. They're not going to speak about secular things. In other words, they're following the tradition. We spoke last week how important tradition, right? How important tradition is. We spoke about the importance, right? So you can't have other things intertwined, right? There are people out there that will call themselves Dr. Rabbi, a Rabbi Doctor, right? They're much more modern, right? I met somebody who's going for a rabbinical degree and also becoming a lawyer at the same time. So my Rebbe once told me a story. When he was in South Africa, he had a disagreement with the doctors, like more than 40 years ago. And he said after 40 years, they finally agreed I was right. So he said for that they call me Dr. Sternbuch. So I go, Rabbi Doctor? He goes, no. There's the rabbi, there's the doctor. He's like, never the two shall meet. So 2 minutes later, I go, Rabbi Doctor? He goes, I got it. He says, I got it. He goes, but no, they don't mix. In any case, in any case, it's totally 100% unadulterated Torah, which means that it's pure. No secular thing. Doesn't mean, okay, when they're, we talk about animals and the insides of animals, what makes an animal non-kosher or treif, whatever. So you have to know the anatomy of an animal. Right? That's not bringing extraneous things in. That you have to understand how it works. But when you start bringing in foreign things that have nothing to do with Torah, it certainly can be heresy. Nothing to talk about. Leave your mind open till your brains fall on the floor. That's not good for Torah. Totally not good for Torah. So what it means over here is you're having proper students. It's pure Torah. Pure Torah. Right? It reminds me of the famous story of the Baal HaTanya, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe. First Lubavitcher Rebbe had a student wanting to go to university. So the Tanya said, he asked him, when are you going to university? He said, a lot of terrible things go on there. A lot of heresy you're going to hear. So the student said, don't worry about it. He said, I learned by you for many years. I didn't become such a great tzaddik. I didn't become so righteous. He said, if I go there, I won't be such a Rasha either. I won't be so evil. Yeah, after the Baal HaTanya said, you're making a big mistake. You're making a huge mistake, because when it comes to impurity, right, you come in contact with a dead animal, all you have to do is touch it. He said that's how easy it is to be impure. If you want Torah, you have to absorb it. Torah doesn't come by osmosis. You got to work at it. You got to fight for it. Right? So therefore what? So you will buy me a couple years, you think, that's going to make you so righteous? What's going to make you righteous is how hard you work. Right? So the Chazon Ish, famous Chazon Ish, Rabbi Avram Yeshaya Karowitz, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, one of the Torah giants, Bnei Brak, the last generation, said that if a person teaches Torah properly, right, if they teach it properly, you don't mix anything else in, you give it over the way it should be given over, right, just the facts, give it over in the true way, you're going to have many students. But having many students, now this is the thing. He says, having many students doesn't guarantee there'll be proper students.
Right.
Not everyone can drink the same Kool-Aid and still be on that level and be a proper student. We see by the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon didn't have many students. And he was a Torah giant according to everybody 250 years ago. Nothing to talk about. He would have been a Torah giant in the time of Rashi or the Rambam. 400 or 500 years earlier.
Really?
That's how great his soul was. But he didn't have many students. But the students that he had were the righteous of that generation. They were the Torah giants of that generation. Right? So having many students doesn't mean a whole lot. If they're a bunch of rabble-rousers, if they went under a rogue rabbi and it's my way, the highway, and he calls out me and he calls out other people and say, you don't know how to learn. You're nothing. I'm the only one who knows how to learn. And the students are a bunch of wackos. And he himself is a wacko himself, capital W. I'm not going to pull any punches here.
Good. We appreciate it.
So, in the end, these people are crazy. But I've never seen, in the last 25 years, 27 years, been part of the Orthodox community, anyone ever say it's my way, the highway. You can have disagreements. People can disagree. Rabbis can disagree. That's fine. Telling them they don't know how to learn. Telling them they don't know anything. And you got no pedigree. You don't have your own rabbinical authority. You can say, I have my own rabbinical authority. You don't have anyone who backs you. You're a fraud. Total fraud. So somebody like that is going to call people up. What do you think his students are going to look like? They'll be all over Facebook fighting with everybody.
Right.
Telling them, I know this, and they'll quote Kabbalah, and they don't know anything, these people. Right? So the students that a person has will show the integrity of the person that teaches them. And again, does that mean people can't go sour? They have other trials and tribulations? Doesn't mean that. Right? But if they're on the up and up, they'll have proper amount of students. It's not about quantity. Right? It's about quality. A person can have a lot of students, that's true. The question is if they're real students or not. The Brisker Rav said about his father, someone came to him and he said, yeah, I'm a student of your father, Rabbi Chaim. He said, great, how many years have you worked by him? He said, 3. He goes, that doesn't make you a student. You got to be there a lot longer to be called a student, right? But you got to take what the Rebbe gives. You have to. Yeah, he might get angry at you also, things that you may say or things that you may do, and put you in your place. But at the end of the day, there are 2 things, 2 factors. You have to be able to give over, and you have to be able to accept. And not everyone has the power to give over, right? Not everyone has that ability. And by certain people, not everyone has the ability to accept what they say. Some people, I think, 10 times way too strong. For people just beginning to listen. I told people, don't listen to him. He said, what, I shouldn't listen to him? I said, yeah, because you don't know how to digest it. Yeah, I've been learning for 20 years, more than 20 years. So I know how to digest it because I've learned a lot. Mm-hmm. So I know where the person's coming from. A beginner, even someone's not necessarily a beginner, okay, you have to be able to read between the lines. And most people can't do that. Right? So you have to be careful who to learn with. Not everyone's a good fit.
No.
You have to be able to accept what they say. And you have to be at a level to be able to the person has to be able to give over, first of all. And second of all, the person has to be able to accept what they say. And if they can't accept what they say, or it's too harsh and they're not holding there, it's no mitzvah to listen to them. Doesn't mean they're bad. It just means it's not a good mix. It's not a good fit. So that's what it means. That's what it means having many students, right? A few definitions here.
But now it gets interesting, right?
Yeah. Now we'll speak about what it means. Yeah, because I only got 10 minutes. We'll see if we go.
Take as much time as you need, Rabbi. I mean, yeah, we're not doing anything. It's a holiday over here in the West, so there's no stores really open. And
right. All right, let's see here. My screen is actually freezing up a little bit. What does it mean? Oh, there we go. What does it mean to make a fence around the Torah?
Construct a boundary, yeah.
Yeah, so what is a boundary? Right, now people are going to make the mistake. People are going to make a mistake and say, well, actually, before we get there, making a fence means you're not going to come and transgress a Torah prohibition. Right? In other words, why do the rabbis make a fence around the Torah? So you don't come to something more severe. For example, Torah tells us 3 things about Shabbos. Tells us you can't cook on Shabbos, can't carry on Shabbos, can't light a fire on Shabbos. But we know, well, if you don't know, you'll know now, there are 36 other categories that the rabbis, quote unquote, added to the Torah. So now you're going to tell me, we mentioned last week, right, the book of Deuteronomy says can't add or subtract. Problem with oral law. So where'd the rabbis get it from? Where'd they make it up from? These crazy rabbis. God forbid. Where'd they make it up from? So the Torah in the book of Exodus, we'll get there soon, upcoming weeks. The end of the book of Exodus speaks about the building of the Mishkan, building of the tabernacle. All its detail, a lot of detail. All about the bars and the loops and the clasps and the beams. Get out your little book. Okay, what it looks like, this, that, how they all fit together. And then the Torah says, going through all the details, by the way, you have to keep Shabbos. Right? So 2,000 years later, right, we asked the question, Rashi asked the question, what's it doing here? What do you mean keep Shabbos? You already told me there's an obligation when they were in the desert to keep Shabbos. You already told me Exodus chapter 20 they have to keep Shabbos. Why are you telling me now? I know you have to keep Shabbos. So you say emphasis. The Karaites will say, no, it's for emphasis. What do you mean the emphasis? There are no extra words in the Torah. If there are no extra words in the Torah, what are you teaching me? Teaching you how to think. No. What are they doing here? Doesn't make sense. Not only that, right? We learn out, Rashi says, that anything done in the tabernacle, anything done in the Mishkan, is forbidden on Shabbos. Does not supersede Shabbos. Right? Why? There's a juxtaposition of the verses. So each verse has something to do with the verse before. Or you have to find what the connection is. That being true, so what's the connection? So the rabbis learn out, as Rashi says, anything done in the tabernacle does not supersede Shabbos. Or anything similar. Right? They made up rabbinical laws that are similar to the Torah prohibition on Shabbos. Otherwise you come to transgress the Torah prohibition. Now,
heaven forbid.
Now, there are 3 commands on Shabbos, the Torah says. Don't carry, right? Don't cook, don't make a fire. What is the punishment for transgression of the laws of Shabbos? You get killed if there was a Sanhedrin. You get killed in this world. Even though we don't have corporal punishment today, per se, with the Sanhedrin. And you get spiritually cut off. You don't have a portion of the world to come. You die in this world, no portion of the world to come. Now, that has to be you did it on purpose. You got warned, right? You understood what you were doing. The witnesses warned you with the right prohibition, right? The number of factors involved. If the punishment is so severe that you're going to get the death penalty, even spiritually cut off, then how come all these things aren't mentioned? How could you put him to death? You didn't tell him. You only said 3 things. What about plowing? What about writing? Torah doesn't mention by writing. We're not for the prophets. Right? What about cooking we mentioned. What about selection? Not mentioned. What about tying and untying? What about ripping things to shreds? No mention of it. So how can the Torah obligate you if it's not mentioned, right? So we spoke about the importance of oral law, so we're not going to have any questions. But anything, so what's the point over here? The point is that the rabbis came along and made a fence around the Torah so you don't transgress a more serious prohibition. In other words, in the laws of Shabbos, we're told that, that there are Torah prohibitions, things you're not allowed to do. There are rabbinic prohibitions, anything that's similar to a Torah prohibition, because you might forget it's Shabbos. So therefore, since it's similar, the rabbi said you're not allowed to do it. Right now, you asked the $1 million question. I'm sure someone's going to ask, how do we know? Where do we know rabbis are allowed to do this? Why should we listen to them? We already know why we should listen to them. You got to watch the video from last week. Give me more views. But where do we know it out from? Because the Torah says, Leviticus chapter 18, verse 30, you shall safeguard my charge. Not to do any of the abominable traditions that were done before you. Not to contaminate yourself. Through it, I am Hashem your God. Making safeguards around the Torah gives the rabbis the right to do that. Now, there's also another mitzvah to listen to the rabbis. Right? They listen to the judges in every generation. So not only have to listen to them, but they're allowed to make decrees. So it gives them the ability to safeguard the Torah, because we do not want to come to such a more serious prohibition. Now, keeping what the rabbis tell us, you're going to say, what do I have to listen to them for? Because it shows not only our connection to Torah, it shows us the specialness, and it shows us the fear we have to have. What's the fear? Because we have to have the fear even more than doing the mitzvah itself. Not just you're worried about transgressing whatever this is. It's about the fence, even transgressing the fence around the Torah. Why? Right? Why would I say
dabbling,
that?
Yeah.
Why would I say that? Because if a person does the mitzvah to whatever level he does it, it doesn't show he has fear. It could be he's keeping the mitzvah, he's doing it by rote because he's afraid. Like all you JC lovers out there, you're going to fry in hell forever. Right? Maybe that's why you're going to keep the Torah, because you don't want to fry. That's not a good way to do things. Right? Fear of heaven is not going to lead you to love of God. I mean, it's not going to lead you to love of God per se, but you need fear of heaven 100%. Right? But if a person fears transgressing the fence around the Torah, not the Torah prohibition itself, but the fence around the Torah, then it shows that they'll do whatever it takes not to transgress the more serious prohibition, i.e. the Torah itself. Now, when you show the importance of not wanting to transgress a rabbinic prohibition, so that shows that you're doing the mitzvah because you have fear. But doing the mitzvah itself doesn't show that. I mean, you'd say, well, maybe it does. Maybe that's why some people keep the Torah, because they don't want to fry. They don't want to get punished. You know, I think it's the path of the just, or the ways of the righteous. I forget which one. I think it's the ways of the righteous says it. That keeping the Torah and the mitzvah is only because you're afraid you're going to fry in hell forever. That's the lowest level. That's the lowest level of fear. That's the lowest level of fear of God. I don't remember exactly. I think it's the ways of the righteous. Could be wrong. Could be path of the just. It's one of them. One of them that says it. Right? But in other words, if you keep the Torah only for that reason, it doesn't show you have fear of heaven. But if you keep it because you don't want to transgress a more serious prohibition, right? Then it shows you'll do whatever it takes. Then it shows you're going to get there because you're afraid to transgress. Now, so that's one thing, or two things. So my Rebbe points out as well. He heard from one great rabbi, doesn't mention who, doesn't mention person by name, that he says that we have to be grateful, to our forefathers, that they had only guarded the written law. Let's say they didn't make a fence. Don't want to get in trouble here, because they didn't add to the Torah, made a fence. Right? They made a fence around the Torah. That if they only guarded the written law of the Torah, it wouldn't be so strong. In other words, you're guarding the minimal. You may not even get it right, but let's say you got it right. So who says that's any good? You're only guarding the minimal. It'll be weak in our hands. Since they made fences around the Torah, and a person is worried about upholding what the Torah says, even the fences around the Torah, they're going to merit to keep the Torah properly. Right? Otherwise, you're keeping minimally, what you're supposed to keep. So the person will say, I'm going to be a Karaite. I'm only going to keep what the Torah says. So we saw last week, we made fun of them a little bit. Right? It doesn't make sense, because the Torah itself doesn't make sense. So if they're scrupulous, if a person is scrupulous in keeping the mitzvahs, and they're stringent to fulfill God's will, in other words, they're going to go beyond the letter of the law. They're going to do things even if the Torah didn't tell me. Right? Even if you can say, come on, is this really similar? The laws of mixing milk and meat. There are a lot of things that you should never come to eat milk and meat together. Right? In other words, if one of the decrees is if a person, if one person sitting at the table is eating meat and someone else eating dairy, you don't want to eat on the same tablecloth, so you have separate placemats. You don't want to mix up different things, silverware or cutlery, depends where you're from, right? You have different types, different colors, so you don't mix them up. You say it's not a Torah prohibition, you're right. But they wanted to make sure you don't come to these problems. Eating a chicken, right? Eating chicken, Parmesan, not allowed to. The Torah prohibition is on meat. It says don't cook a calf in its mother's milk. A calf is red meat. So what happened? So why did they make a decree on chicken? Because you might forget, say, I can eat chicken with milk. I can have chicken parmesan, so I can eat meat. They'll forget.
Right.
So someone who's scrupulous in keeping these mitzvahs, even if they're rabbinic in nature, they fulfill God's will. They show Torah's importance. And they're going to be careful not to transgress the Torah. They're going to be careful even the minutest of details. This is what people have a problem with also. There's a lot of detail to be a Jew. You know, being Noahide, not so much detail. I mean, there is what to say to be a Noahide also. You know, plenty what to do as well. Certainly not as much as a Jew. Right? So you have to have fear of heaven. You have to worry, not just because you're going to fry in hell forever. Because you believe it's the right thing to do. You don't want to transgress. And if we really understood what it meant, I could get creepy here and scare people, but it's not my job per se. I mean, if they're listening up until this point, then not really going to get scared. But, in the end, if we really understood what our actions did and what the repercussions are, you wouldn't even get out of bed. We'd be so terrified. We wouldn't get out of bed.
Yeah, good move.
Right? So, as my Rebbe points out, you're going to get unbelievable reward in the next world because you're showing how important it is. Even to transgress the rabbinic prohibition. Like, it's only the rabbis. Yeah, it's only the rabbis. But if you don't listen to the rabbis, you're liable for a death penalty. So you can say, well, the rabbis put that in, so they should have respect. Yeah, maybe. But maybe they also understood they're a link in a chain. And that they're giving over to save the Jewish people. Right? They certainly understood that. Now, when it comes to child education, so they also have to see how precious Torah is. So if they see that their fathers, their parents, are scrupulous in keeping the commandments, we're also going to see that. Right? It's going to have an impression. Right? So even there's a case, let's say somebody works, and they go to learn at night. They go to classes at night. Come home, they're tired, they eat a little bit. They go out to learn for an hour, a couple hours, whatever. And the question was that, this father's so dead tired, like 90% of the time he's going to listen to this class, he's going to fall asleep. Is there any merit to go if you know he's going to fall asleep? So the answer that was given was, it's better to go even if you know you're going to fall asleep, so your kids go see that you go to learn. That makes a tremendous impression. Right? So if we want our kids to learn, and we want them to be scrupulous, we also have to be scrupulous. Right? They have to be able to see. They have to be able to see what we do. And we're our own worst enemy because they see the good, the bad, and everything else in between. So they have to see what we do. And the fact that we're scrupulous in mitzvah observance, so they're also going to be scrupulous. Even what the rabbis tell us we're going to do. And we don't even make the distinction. Like, this is a Torah, like they go hand in hand. Whether it's a rabbinical law, whether it's a Torah law, it doesn't really matter. Right? And there are plenty of things that are rabbinic law. The only people that complain, the people have issues with it. So, I have to listen to the rabbis. Why did this? Why did that? But there are plenty of things you listen to the rabbis about. I mentioned last week, woman lights Hanukkah candles. Lights Shabbos candles, rabbinic. Milk and chicken, rabbinic. Right? There are plenty of things that are rabbinic. But, again, they understood. They understood the way of the world. They understood where a person's holding, where they need to go. What they need to do. And they felt Shabbos, that's the example we gave. Shabbos is so crucial and is so important. And you see the punishment, how severe the punishment is. Right? So they wanted to make sure you're not going to come to something worse. They're going to make sure beyond the shadow of a doubt that you don't forget it's Shabbos. Like someone said, you really think, God cares if you rip toilet paper or not? Well, I wouldn't be in there if they didn't. Right? You forget about it. You forget about it Shabbos. You wouldn't enjoy Shabbos if you did all these other things. Just as a side point, I had somebody I grew up with. I was once back in Boston, and so my mother invited a lot of people to come and whatever. The person said, is it really true you're an Orthodox Jew? I said, right. He says, is it really true that you use tissues on Shabbos? You don't use toilet paper? I said, yeah. And like they're like totally grossed out. Like the difference between like tissues and toilet paper is like it's even softer, right? So they're like totally, they go, like they were totally grossed out. I don't know exactly why, whatever. So I said, you ever been to India? You know why you don't shake an Indian's left hand? That's gross. That is gross with capital G.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
I think using tissues is a little more humane. You know?
Let's face it, most of, like I've chatted with the Rabbi Shulman and a few others, the laws that have to do with dealing with molds and things like that. I mean, everything's done to be clean and healthy, is it not?
Listen, we talk about, I've been giving this class in the book of Leviticus a number of weeks about Leviticus chapter 11, about kosher and unkosher animals, right? But, how's it translated? They'll say clean and unclean, right? But I could take a kosher chicken, I could put all kinds of chemicals on it, make it taste good. That has nothing to do with being clean. It might kill you in the process. It just means whether it's kosher or not. Just, it's a bad translation, right? We call it pure, impure, whatever, whatever these words mean. But if you go to like, a place, someone once told me, I'm not going to mention the rabbinic supervision, went to a place where, went to a plant to see how, cakes and stuff are made. They said, you walk in there, like the FDA should shut it down. So it has nothing to do about being clean, and hopefully, and if people would know like what, how things are made, you would never eat them. You just be eating things you grew yourself. That's it. But okay, we live in a fast food world, right? That's really the bottom line. So, the laws in general are about bettering us, right? What's the difference? Where Moshe Feinstein, Zecher Tzadik Levracham, his name be blessed, the Torah giant of the last generation, lived in America, in New York. He said, in Parshas Mishpatim, which talks about all the laws of damages, right? It's the longest parsha of mitzvahs in the Torah. And he asked the question, what's the difference between the laws of the Jews and non-Jews? He says the laws of the Torah, let's say first, the laws in the secular world are there to make sure it's not chaos. Now, there's unbelievable amount of chaos in the world. Secular laws try and combat that, right? But, jails are packed, overpacked, whatever.
Especially in the U.S., yes.
So you see people break the law. But the laws are there. The laws are there to keep society not running into chaos. What's the purpose of the Torah? The purpose of the Torah, the laws are to make you a better person. To help you strive to reach your true potential. So you're going to say, well, how do I know? How do I know that's true? Well, guess who manufactured the book? Most popular book ever written. God himself. Passed it down to Moshe. Spoke about that last week. Passed it down. God said it. Moshe wrote it. That's it. Right? So therefore, we didn't add, didn't subtract. Most popular book. And he says, you want to be close to me? This is what you have to do. We say, got a question. Okay, Coffman question. What's the question? Question is, 80% of this 90% doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make logical sense. God says, shut up and eat the matzah. Doesn't matter. I'm telling you, this is how you're going to get close to me. You want godliness? This is what you have to do. Now, some of it does make sense. Right? There are a number of things that make sense. A lot of it doesn't. You have to, we have to train our minds to be, to think the way the Torah wants us to think. But in the end, what's the purpose? The purpose is God says this is what's going to draw you closer. Keep Shabbos, right? Take your lulav. Shake your lulav. Eat 40 pounds of matzah in 35 seconds and whistle Dixie. Can't do it because your mouth's so dry, right? Do all these mitzvahs. Light those candles. Beautiful. Eat those donuts, latkes. All these things. You're going to say, no, but it gives me, it's high in cholesterol. Doesn't matter. Eat them. It's part of the mitzvah. But God's saying, this is how I want you to serve me. I mean, okay, not donuts and whatever, but this is the way I want you to serve me. This is how you're going to draw close to me. Any questions? I don't think there are any questions. Because he's saying, I manufacture the book myself. Go learn it. Go understand it. Right? You can be like the student that asked Hill, I want to learn the Torah on 1 foot. Spin him like a top. It's like, Beis Shammai threw him out. Beis Hillel sat there and answered. Gave an answer. So it's all about doing what God wants to the best of our ability and to strive and to be like him. Right? Just like he's compassionate, we should be compassionate. Right? We should give charity, we should help others, all these things. And plenty of other things. Keep Shabbos, keep the holidays. But these are all things you have to understand what's behind it. Right? That's 90% of what I do besides going through the laws themselves. Yeah, I get into picayune details of what you have to do, but you have to know why. My Rebbe says, what are you giving them to speak about emunah and faith? You got to teach them what to do. I said, of course I'm teaching them what to do. But they're coming from a non-Jewish, they're coming from a non-Jewish background. They have to understand why. And sometimes the reason is because God said it. Right? But we can try and understand it to the best of our ability. And what it means for us today. You talk about Hanukkah. Just as a side point. People think, though you light the candles, this, that, what was it? We don't have any connection to this. The fight with the Greeks, the mighty Greeks, against a ragtag bunch of yeshiva students, 10 times out of 10, they always lose. Right? Unless they're the Patriots. But they'll lose. 10 times out of 10, they'll lose. Right? In the end, you think, I don't have any connection to the Greeks today. You're right. The Greeks don't exist. Except for, some architecture. That exists in different parts of the world. Great, but the Greeks do exist. You know why they exist? Because they taught us about education. Right? They gave us the aqueducts. Right, for Brian. Aqueducts. What did they ever do for us? They made roads. They made roads. They gave us aqueducts. Are there any aqueducts anymore? I don't know. Any case, I digress. But we're living in a Greek world. This is the real world. Education. Worship of the body, entertainment, sports. It's all Greek. So what do you mean we don't live in a Greek world? We don't have any connection. Yeah, the Greeks are long gone. We're still here. Right? The Jews are still here. But we're definitely living in a Greek world. There's nothing to talk about. Right? That's 100% for sure. So the question is how you navigate in that world and attaching yourself to Torah. So what do we say? That if you, as my Rebbe pointed out, if you're scrupulous in keeping Torah mitzvahs, and you're stringent to do God's will, and to do what the rabbis tell you, you're going to get there. You're going to get there. You have to do it step by step. But he said you are going to get there. And it shows that Torah is important. Right? They don't have any problem. Any Jews out there have any problem lighting Hanukkah candles? No. Probably one of the most mitzvahs that they do during the year. And it's fun also. Get your kids into it, whatever. Spend the dreidel, eat some latkes. Right? It's a lot of fun. In a lot of ways. Right? But they miss the whole point. They miss the whole point. Because they're living in a Greek world. They're living in a Greek world. They're Greeks themselves. Because they give so much importance to the secular world. And there are Orthodox Jews out there that have 2 feet in the secular world, quarter of a foot in the religious world. They can't pass it down to their kids because they're rabbi doctors. And they think secular world is just as important as the religious world. And they have no problem going to a ball game. And spending hours watching who knows what. They keep Shabbos, not saying not. They keep kashrus, not saying not. But is that really what God wants? That's the Greeks. So they'll be strict in certain ways, they'll be lenient in other ways, but they'll jump in head first. What's the matter with the secular world? Why can't I get benefit? You have to get benefit. You have to know how. You have to know how to tap in. I mean, again, I can speak for the next 2 hours about that also. Right? But, since I was in the secular world, I know all about it. So, seeing all that does not make someone righteous. Right? What do we say in the Shema every day? We say you're not allowed to go after your heart and after your eyes. Right? I just mentioned this in my class earlier this morning. That we have two things, 2 vessels of sin that we use in our bodies. Our eyes and our hearts. What our eyes see, remembers. Right? You see things that you shouldn't see, has an effect. Your heart desires. You got to train the mind. You have to train the mind how to think. right? Which is, part of my job, squeegee the brain. How to get non-Jews to think like Jews, think like what the Torah wants. Get Jews to do that also. But, that is the goal. Because, we're living in such an upside down world, that's what the Talmud says. One of the rabbis went up to heaven, they asked him, came back, said, what'd you see? So I saw an upside down world. The people who are, who are most popular in this world, they ain't doing so well. They ain't smelling so well, in the next world. So, so that being said, the ones who are going to be able to pass Torah, and there's no guarantee. Torah is not a Yerusha. It's not a inheritance, right? So there's no guarantee that we're going to be able to pass it down to our kids. But we have to do the best of our ability. We have to give it at the highest level. We have to, train them. Is there a guarantee? There's no guarantee. But if you say, just let them do whatever they want. Let them choose their own path. Who's going to choose this path? Not too many. No one's going to choose this path. You have to train them. Now they have free choice. They can go one way or the other. They go away from it. They could revel in it. They could have, a great time in it. But at the same time, it's got to be pure.
Right.
Not insulated anymore like we used to be. People have these, people with handheld devices, TVs, other thing, whatever it is, very easy to get information. Good information, bad information. So we're not as insular as we used to be. And that's 100% true. But at the same time, it doesn't matter because we hold that, a little bit of Torah pushes away a lot of darkness. But you have to keep going. So, right? So I'm the Energizer Bunny. You just got to keep going and striving and striving. And you're going to make mistakes. You're going to fall. But it says the righteous person falls 7 times and he gets up. You got to dust yourself off. You make mistakes. You got to be consistent. You got to work hard. That's what life is. Life is all about that.
Learn and apply and learn and apply. And if you make a mistake, dig in and learn some more. Ask a rabbi.
No, 100%. And people will say, people will say, you know what? Honestly, you made a mistake. Like someone once told me a crazy thing. Someone once said, if you go out to a non-kosher restaurant, I'm not going to tell anyone. I was like, that's great. You could drop dead. I don't care about you. I'm worried about him. Like, who cares what you think? Who cares what the rest of the world thinks? I have to answer to a higher authority.
Right.
And it's a rough thing navigating this world. We have all kinds of trials and tribulations, one more difficult than the other. No question. There's absolutely no question. But the point, anyway, not to digress too much, but the point is that someone who's scrupulous and keeping what they need to keep, they're fulfilling what God wants. Right? Even if they say, I'm going to do all the rabbinical laws also. Orthodox Jews don't think in those terms. They think of the Torah as one thing. Oral law, written law. They're like, oh, I'm not going to wait 6 hours between milk and meat. It's rabbinic. This is what you do. Yeah, okay. So you don't want to be, what they call flashophobia, afraid of eating meat. So you have to wait 6 hours, right, to eat dairy. Okay, so you won't eat meat. So I like parve chocolate, not a problem. Right? It's, bittersweet chocolate. You don't have a problem. I don't like bittersweet chocolate. I like the real thing. Okay? Whatever. So I never lose out. As long as there's chocolate in my house. But in general, you go in that way. People don't think in those terms. People think, okay, I'll eat this, I won't eat this, whatever. But they're not thinking, oh, this is rabbinic, I'm not going to do it. Well, it depends what it is. It depends how big a person's evil inclination is and what, most people coming into the fold, it's not going to matter. You can say, oh, that's only rabbinical. Really? 70% is rabbinical, so what? You're not going to listen, so it depends what it is. A person has to grow. You can't do everything at once. Impossible. I find people say, yeah, I want to do this, I want to do that. I'm like, just take it step by step. Take baby steps and then cut that in half. Because when you take baby steps and you do it consistently, then you go on to other things. Then you can build. It's all about building blocks. Otherwise, you try and do something all at once. Evil inclination's like, go, go, go. Finished. Because evil inclination knows you're going to explode. There's no possible way.
So balancing this all out, the fence around the Torah is there for our protection, there to stop the profane, and like you say, great scholars usually are tempted a lot more, like you've mentioned. There's a lot in summary today. We don't have a ton of questions. We did have somebody ask a simple question. Is it true that God loves everyone? Very, very basic question. It must mean
No.
something to the person.
No. Right? What does King David say? King David says, "I love those that you love, and I hate those that you hate." And his son King Solomon says that in Psalms. And his son King Solomon says in Ecclesiastes, "It's time to love, it's time to hate." Right?
Right.
The mistake that people make is they think, okay, this person doesn't keep Torah mitzvahs, but he's a nice person. Nice according to who?
Yeah, what standard?
What standard? Do they cheat in their taxes? Do they pull the plug on someone? Euthanasia? Like, what's your definition? Right? Everyone thinks, oh, we love, God loved. No. He wants that mercy on people. But if they spit in his face on a regular basis, they don't keep Shabbos. They don't care. It doesn't matter what they know, what they don't know. God will have a certain level of mercy. Does he love these people? No. He wants them to do the right thing. He wants them to go in the right direction. Right? The Torah makes clear. Let's make no mistake. Right? The Torah makes clear if you do what you're supposed to do, good. If not, going to be famine. No food. You won't get rain in your proper time. That doesn't sound good. He's not whistling Dixie saying, wow, I'm so happy he just transgressed this. I'm so happy he did that. Why should he love you? You repent?
Yeah. No, we're dust. We need to have that attitude, that right
attitude.
If
you repent, it's one thing. And it's true repentance. But if you spit in God's face on a regular basis, why in the world should he love you? Okay, so if you believe in JC, you don't have to do anything. He loves everyone. He died for all your sins. You can do whatever you want. That's called pass the buck. Right? The Torah is clear. You have to take responsibility for your actions. Now, is God going to love everything you do? Certainly not. And if he loved everything you did, would he punish you? Why would he punish you? No, it's okay. You can eat the shrimp. I'll look the other way. That's fine. Right? What does the Torah say? 10 Commandments. God's a jealous God. Got to toe the line. You don't toe the line, it's payback. Why shouldn't there be payback? Does he have mercy? Yes. Is it infinite? It's not infinite. At some point, God's going to say, okay, I gave you a chance. I gave you a second chance. I gave you a 10th chance. I gave you 150 billion chance. You still spit in my face. Okay. You have me with no choice. I did something around you. You didn't get the message. Now I have to hit you with the pocket. If you didn't get the message, I'm going to hit you in your body. That's how it works. But you have to get the message. Does that mean God loves me? Now, in that sense, yes, because if he didn't punish you and there's no discipline, then he doesn't care. If you just say, go do whatever you want and everything's good, I don't care, I don't have a connection to you, so who cares? But the fact that a parent has to punish a child, the parent's going to say, well, it's going to hurt me a lot more, it's going to hurt you. Right? Whap! Right? Obviously you can't do that today. Right? Your kid will call the police on you. But in general, kids want to be disciplined. What does King Solomon say in Proverbs? Person who spares the rod is cruel.
Cruel.
It means that kids want discipline. Okay, you're not allowed to beat them up. You're not allowed to smack them around. Right? Totally different generation today.
They want the interaction, though.
Yeah, they don't want to say, okay, do what you want. No boundaries. They don't want that. They want to see how they can test the boundaries, but they want boundaries. They don't want to be left on their own, because then it's a disaster. God wants the best for everybody, 100%. But if you don't do what he wants, he wants you to repent. He doesn't want to have to punish. Parent doesn't want to have to punish. But sometimes, a kid does something, he has to be punished. You have to make the punishment fit the crime, 100%. Right? But in the end, in the end, punishment doesn't mean it's not love. Lack of punishment, lack of discipline, yeah, that's what it means. That means God doesn't care. Yeah.
Rabbi, and this is why the rabbis do teach that some people are wealthy because Hashem's just given up on them. Here, just go away. Here you
Right.
go.
Right.
They live wealthy, and you think that they're unjust, and they got everything. How come they're unjust and they seem to be prosperous? And the reality is Hashem said, just go away. And
Right.
so
Right. That's the same thing with the snake. Commentaries ask, snakes, has his legs cut off, and the snake has dust, and he can eat his whole life. What kind of punishment is that? Because God says he never needs me. He's always got food. He's always got what to sustain himself with. He doesn't need me. So God says, you're finished. I don't need you. Goodbye.
Very key point. Very key point. I mean, I just hope that B'nai Noah begin to understand that, because we're talking about Hashem, great in mercy, great in justice, and understanding how that balances and plays itself out, along with the dynamics of him giving us free will in this world. And so the chaos that seems to be out there is only balanced on a scale with Torah. And more than that, we need to see it. And I'm thankful, Rabbi, that you're taking the time to clarify so much. I mean, especially for us that are not brought up in Jewish tradition, it is almost, to me, it's like fresh water. It's like life blood, and in the sense that hey, I need to know how to function in this world. And I like how you said that children, they want the discipline, and that's why they test it. And so many people, I've seen parents, they think they're just obliging their children screaming in a Walmart or whatever the case might be, and they just give them what they want to shut them up. And the reality is that's not what the child's looking for. They're testing the boundaries. They want to see how far they can. They want that honest guidance and structure, or the end result is just never good. They're spoiled.
Right.
And it's like an egg that goes rotten.
100% of the time, it's going to end up bad. Right, that's the case, because it's not just testing the boundaries. They're just going to go so far away that then they're going to come crawling back, because then their lives are ruined, right, in a lot of different ways. But that's what they want. They definitely want discipline. I don't think there's any. I don't think there's any question. Yeah.
These fences that you're talking about, that the rabbi said to put a fence around Torah, do they play into that same kind of role?
What do you mean?
In the sense that they're there to stop the profane, but more than that, they're a permissive way from Hashem to deal with the world and the chaos in the world. I mean, I don't know.
They understood the nature of man. And they understood, you get all these laws of Shabbos. A lot of laws you have to constantly review, otherwise you transgress. Right? But they understood if you would do this, that, and the other thing on Shabbos, you wouldn't enjoy Shabbos anymore. It would take away from your enjoyment. If you kept doing all these different things. It's only rabbinic, but it's not, it's not 100% so similar, but they thought enough of it was that you may forget about the holiness of Shabbos. And by forgetting about the holiness of Shabbos, what would you end up doing? You end up transgressing. You won't enjoy Shabbos as much.
Wow.
So they put it out there. They go, the rabbi's this, the rabbi's that. It's clear what they understood the nature of man. And they understand what man has to do, what they have to go through. And what's going to be good for them and not good for them. How do they know that? How do they understand that? God gave them the vessels to do it. He gave them the ability to do that. A lot of it you'll say, well, it's divine inspiration or whatever. You'll say, well, these smartest people ever created in the history of man. Yeah, but they were holding a certain level. We can't even imagine who these people are. Oh, the rabbis this, the rabbis that. It's just, I keep saying it because I just think it's so funny. And people make statements to make fun of some of the things they say and blah, blah, blah. Like, in the end, can you bring people back from the dead? No.
Yeah.
Are you even close? No. You're so far away. How can you even comment?
I know, and we think we're so technologically advanced or progressed through the centuries, and yet we've lost that.
I'll give you one example. In the Rambam's time, he was a doctor. So he can tell you what plants to put together in order to cure this, that, and the other thing. You go to a doctor to say, you have this, you have that. Say, okay, take this. Why? Don't ask me why, because it works. This is what it does. Do they know really why? Maybe some do, some don't. Whatever the case is. But, we're lost. We're lost. The Rambam was medieval. He was, but he understood clear as day how these things work and interact. So you can tell me, holistic doctors can do the same thing. Not the same. It's not the same. You see what the Rambam did and what he wrote and how he did things. It's you're not even talking about the time of the rabbis. You're still talking 200-300 years before. So like, as great as the Rambam was, it wasn't the time of the Mishnah. Wasn't the time of the Gemara's later. So is Rashi. Okay. Not trying to degrade them. But you have to see, you have to see who you're comparing to.
We stand on the shoulders.
Yeah, we stand on the ground and we're ants, not even ants. Compared to them. Yeah, remember. Yeah.
I don't mean to cut you short, but we've been going at it for more than an hour and a half. And
okay.
Do you want to summarize the Mishnah for today? I mean, we know that Moshe received it from Sinai and he transmitted it to Joshua. Today you went on about how they taught 3 specific things about being deliberate, patient, and restrained a little bit in judgment, and establishing disciples. And I think we're starting to grasp the idea behind your construction of a boundary around the Torah a little bit. I'm trying to follow along from lessons I've done before. I enjoy the way you're putting it out for us.
I hope everyone else is also. I have a lot of fun doing this, so as long as people enjoy, we're not gonna cover that much ground. I definitely.
It just seems to me.
Some things will be easier. Some things will be easier than not, but it just opens up a whole thing, which I think is good because it'll get B'nai Noach, whoever listens to this, an idea of what the Torah is, how deep the Torah is. And we haven't even spoken about anything about Kabbalah. And we're just like opening doors of how to really how to think the way the Torah wants to get us to think, and to go in those ways.
Well, you're getting comments online of people saying, thanks, Rabbi Coffman, for taking the time to invest in us. I mean, it's especially for us non-Jews who have not been brought up. I mean, we want to know, we trust the framework of the Sheva Mitzvot and the boundaries that are involved with that. And we're just starting to, most of us, understand how the veins of truth start to run deeper. I like the ethics of the fathers in the sense that it awakens the mind and says, this is why things you began to touch on today. I think is very important that B'nai Noach understand the whys behind. But I think, like you touched on also today, you got to do it because it's the rabbi said to do it. And
but one thing to keep in mind, I guess we'll just end with this, is that there are a lot of things that the rabbis are going to say. They're going to say, well, isn't that obvious? Right? You're going to say, well, it's obvious. Well, let's see. Right? Things that we say, be nice to everyone. Well, that's obvious. Well, not so obvious, if the person's a scoundrel. I was just reading something today by Victor Miller, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, one of the Torah giants in America, the last generation. And he was talking about how to love everybody, to find goodness in everybody. Even someone who's a nudnik and bothers you and this and that and whatever, to focus like a minute a week or 2 minutes a week on one person just to find something good about them. Because everyone has something good about them. Yeah, but this guy talks a lot in synagogue and he bothers people. Yeah, but he's there every day and he's always on time. Now we might just look at him and say, "Oh, this guy bothers me. This," but he's saying something very profound. He said you can find good in everyone, right? Well, that's obvious, isn't it? You don't need me to tell you that. The YouTube rabbi. You don't need me to tell you that. What does it mean? So it means even someone that maybe doesn't have such great character traits. But is there a mitzvah, v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, to love your fellow man like yourself, which is a very hard thing to do? So how are you supposed to do that? Because you got to focus on some good things they do. Any good thing that they do. He's got a nice necktie. Guy's a handsome guy. I don't know, whatever. He brought different examples. It's pretty funny. But
no, I think you really touched on it today about a rabbi and the students. Not all students should be taught, and we need to really be clear in our connection with our rabbi. And you really
who's
drove
the real deal and who's not.
Yes, exactly. And there's too many of them out there that are not. And so we are so thankful that you, as an Orthodox rabbi, are taking the time. We're going to wind it down from there. Are we on for next week?
I guess we're on with next week. If we got people to come, that's good. Otherwise, you and I can just talk for a while.
Well, I think the numbers here today, being December 25th here in North America, and our audience being mostly North American, I've actually had a few people over there in Israel that have commented and talked to me on social media, but the majority are here in North America, and I'm trying to reach that B'nai Noach audience, and hopefully some of the lesson gets out there, because I know there's so much in here that you're taught in that you're probably not permitted to just roll out there to the non-Jew. There's just some beautiful things that I know. I probably went through Pirkei Avos 3 full times, like in depth, and yet you could go back years later and you still, things are going to jump off the page you never heard before. And I'm sure.
Right. That's what Torah is. It's so deep. You can learn it at different levels, different times. You can't do it with any other discipline. Right. Everything else is finite. Torah is just so infinite that you learn it again. You see things like you never saw. It's like, oh yeah, thought about this, thought about that. And you're going to say, wow, I've learned it 3 times. I've never heard anything like you brought it out. I've never seen anything like that. Like, come on. It's good.
I don't want to embellish it or anything, but, I'm enjoying the time. I'm enjoying the time getting to know you more and meeting yourself. But more than that, as a rabbi, to hear you hear the words that I know link all the way back to Sinai. And
isn't it good? We're not, we don't go back to being a chimp. We're not. I'm so happy. I'm so happy I'm not an orangutan. Going back. You say, wow, I can be like Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and you look like a chimp. Like, come on. What about evolution?
Well, that's joy. Folks, we're gonna hang up the class for now, so we appreciate you all coming out, and we hope that you have a wonderful day. The numbers seem to be okay, so we're going to aim to continue this class next week, Hashem willing, with Rabbi Coffman, all the way from Israel, sharing with us Pirkei Avos, the ethics of the fathers, and we're so thankful that you do log in and check it out and share it. Share the links, like it on social media, and also, please, you can check out Rabbi Chaim Coffman himself on his YouTube page, which is just check out Rabbi Chaim Coffman on YouTube, or go to his website, orthodoxconversion.com. And folks, till next week, enjoy the rest of Hanukkah.